Welcome all members and officers to this meeting of the Cabinet, which will be held as a hybrid meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as is practicable following the meeting. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing this meeting either from the Council chamber or from remote locations. Please could everybody ensure that mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda. I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their microphones and where remote their cameras on at that point. But I would ask that with the exception of myself as chairperson, at all other times you keep your cameras and microphones switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference and to ensure the connection remains as stable as possible. Whether in the chamber or remote, any Cabinet members or officers wish to raise a point or question, they should press the hands up icon on the screen hand at the top right hand side of the Microsoft Teams window. I'll come to you in the order I receive requests. Please lower your hand once you have finished speaking. The chat button has been disabled for this meeting. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and when necessary will mute those not being used. I would also ask the officers to introduce themselves as and when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. Officers too should ensure microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use, please. We will now proceed to agenda business. And first of all, are there any apologies for absence from members? And I can see that all members are present in person or remotely. So there are no apologies for absence from members, and I can see that all the Corporate Management Board are also present too. So we will now receive any declarations of personal or prejudicial interest from members and officers in accordance with the provisions of the Members' Code of Conduct adopted by the authority in 2008. Are there any declarations of interest, please? Okay, so no one's indicated, but of course if you do identify an interest during the course of the meeting, then please do raise your hand at that point. We will now receive for approval the minutes of the meeting of Cabinet on the 19th of September and the meeting of Cabinet on the 17th of October. Can I have a mover, please?
Happy to move both, Leader.
Okay, thank you for that. Deputy Leader, do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second it, Leader.
Thank you for that, Councillor Blundell. Is everyone in agreement, please?
Aye.
Thank you, colleagues. And just to say, I don't know if colleagues online can hear, but we do seem to have some background noise that is slightly distracting. But I don't know if we're able to check if.
Are they doing the window? I was going to say, are they putting scaffolding up?
Okay, well we will continue, but it's obviously causing some background noise. As long as you can't hear on line, then that's important. And of course we'll continue. So the first report on today's agenda is a report of the Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change, and that is on the proposed Code of Corporate Governance. So I will ask Caris to present the report. Caris, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. Just to confirm, I'm Caris Lord. I'm the Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change. So the purpose of this report is to present to Cabinet for approval a revised Code of Corporate Governance. Good governance is about doing the right things in the right place for the right people in a timely, inclusive, open, honest and accountable manner. The Code of Corporate Governance reflects a joint commitment by members and senior managers to the principles that it contains. Corporate governance is a phrase used to describe how organisations direct and control what they do. Effective systems of corporate governance provide confidence in public services, and good corporate governance requires local authorities to carry out their services in a way that demonstrates accountability, openness and honesty. Adopting, monitoring and complying with a code of corporate governance helps enhance the Council's legitimacy and acknowledges the trust placed in the Council by local people. The corporate governance is based on a framework which consists of 7 core principles which are detailed for you in Section 5 of Appendix A. To achieve good governance, the authority should be able to demonstrate that its governance structures comply with these core principles. The Governance and Audit Committee is responsible for monitoring and reviewing the governance arrangements within the Council. Through this committee, the Council ensures that these arrangements are kept under continual review. The Code of Corporate Governance was last reviewed by that committee in September this year, and the issues raised at the meeting included that the code should be subject to frequency of change guidelines, that the reference to strong public management should be reworded to say strong public financial management. And there were other minor changes suggested, especially with regard to net zero and data within the document. So as outlined in paragraph 3.3, changes have been made to the code to reflect those comments, and these are highlighted for you within Appendix A. So if I can, Leader, I would just take you to Section 9 of the report, where it's recommended that Cabinet consider and approve the amendments to the Code of Corporate Governance as set out in Appendix A. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Caris. Councillor Williams, please.
Just looking for the appropriate button. Thank you, Leader, and thanks to Caris for presenting the report. This is an important aspect of the authority's management, and I'm very pleased that the Governance and Audit Committee have suggested those minor amendments, and I'm happy to incorporate them into the report. So happy to move the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. I can see that Councillor Farr wants to come in. Councillor Farr, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'm quite happy to second the report. Just one question from me, though. So if staff, public or partner agency believe that there's a breach of the core principles, how are they able to raise this with the Council, please?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Farr. Caris, please.
I think there are 3 avenues via which any issues could be raised. One would be with the monitoring officer. One would be with myself as the Section 151 officer, but also people can also contact our Chief Internal Auditor as well if they have any concerns that a breach of this code that they wish to raise with us.
Thank you for that, Caris, and thank you for the question, Councillor Farr. Do we have a seconder for the recommendation?
I did second it, Leader.
And is everyone in agreement with those recommendations, please?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, colleagues, and thanks to the Governance and Audit Committee for their work on this code. The next report from the Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change is a report on the private rent sector leasing scheme, please. Caris, please.
Thank you, Leader. So the purpose of this report is to update Cabinet on the ending of the current private rent sector leasing scheme arrangements with Cartrefi Hafod, and also to seek Cabinet approval to implement the Welsh Government Leasing Scheme Wales. The Council currently delivers a private rent sector leasing scheme in partnership with Cartrefi Hafod, which enables us to lease properties from the private sector landlords. This accommodation is then used to provide temporary accommodation to those who are homeless, as well as providing accommodation to those who've resettled here via various resettlement schemes. This scheme has provided between 20 and 30 properties in recent years. Cartrefi Hafod have now notified us that they've decided to withdraw from this scheme from all local authorities by the end of this year, and therefore work has been ongoing to decommission this service. There is an agreement in principle to continue to use the registered social landlord-owned properties currently within the existing scheme and to continue to use them in the way that we currently are. With regards to the current properties owned by private landlords, it's proposed that the Council joins the Welsh Government private rent sector leasing scheme so that an offer of an alternative leasing scheme can be made. This will ensure that the Council is able to retain as many of the properties as possible from the private sector for use by households who are in need of accommodation. Participation in this scheme will also enable the Council to offer private sector landlords a number of benefits as outlined in paragraph 3.3 of this afternoon's report. In order to operate the scheme, the Council must agree to take on the responsibilities detailed for you in paragraph 3.5, and grant funding is available from Welsh Government to support this scheme. The ongoing use of this scheme will enable us to maintain accommodation to support people who are in particular need. So if I can, Leader, I just take you to the recommendations detailed at section 9 of this afternoon's report. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Carys. Councillor Good, please.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Carys, for taking us through the report. I'm happy to move it. I really welcome this project. I think, I'd take a moment to thank Hafod for the years that they have run this project. I think it's testament to the amount of pressure that RSLs are facing currently, that they've had to take the decision nationally to withdraw from these projects as they cannot afford to do it any longer. That being said, I think the speed at which this has had to be decommissioned is quite concerning, and I think it is a bit of a shame that we weren't able to get a bit more of a heads up from Hafod that this was coming down the pipeline. But again, I think that speaks to the pressures that they're all facing, and that actually they are moving every month and having to make very difficult decisions, much like we are when it comes to budget pressures. With that, I should say as well that I'd like to thank the Wallich for stepping in via the alternative B&B programme that we already have in place, which has meant that we've had that provision to continue while we work to decommission Hafod's current arrangements. I think this is a really important option that we have within housing to help reduce homelessness. It is quite limited, but I think as well, bringing this report does mean that we will have more direct control of this, which I think is positive. And I would say to any landlords out there, this is an option for you. I think particularly if you have long-term empty properties, there's funding available through this route, and then guaranteed rent from it. So I hope any landlords that might happen to be online listening, you never know, would consider it. But I'm very, very happy to support it. I'm very happy to see us joining the Welsh-wide project. And like I say, I'm happy to remove the report, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Good. I can see that Councillor Farr, then the Deputy Leader, then Councillor Spanzik want to come in. So Councillor Farr first, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'm quite happy to second the report, but I do have 3 questions, if that's okay. So my first question is, will signing this agreement increase the number of properties available to us for people who are homeless? First question. Second question, who will be funding all the work listed in 3.5? Will there be a charge to the landlords or to the tenants or to BCBC? And my third question is, if we don't sign up to this agreement, what are the consequences, please? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Farr. So, number of questions there, and I'll ask Caris to respond to those questions, please.
Thank you for those questions, Councillor Farr. We hope that the scheme will increase the number of houses available to support people. We can't predict at the moment what that will be. There is a model from Welsh Government, but it will vary from area to area. But what we certainly will be doing is promoting the scheme to make sure that private sector landlords are aware that this is a scheme that is available to them. So we will continue to promote the scheme as we have done in the past. And we will monitor, obviously, the positive effect of that with regards to the number of properties that we have. With regards to who funds the work, as you'll see in the report, there is Welsh Government grant available, which, if this is agreed this afternoon, will come to the local authority to assist us in managing this work. Therefore, the costs of those will not be passed on to landlords or tenants. They will be picked up by Bridgend Council via the grants that are available to us from Welsh Government. And I think you asked a question about the consequence of us not actually signing this afternoon. I mean, the aim of this scheme is to bring units back into accommodation for all, the reasons that we all know about and the pressures that we have on temporary accommodation. So the consequence of us not signing this is that we would close down one avenue that we would have of actually being able to access additional accommodation to support people. Thank you.
Thank you for answering those questions, Caris. And next we've got the Deputy Leader, please.
Thank you very much for the report, Caris. I think it's a really important scheme, particularly if we can have an impact on housing around us. In 2.2, you reference landlords receive a guaranteed rent. Who determines that rent level? Because I'm loath to see private landlords making money on public funds. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Caris, please.
Yeah, thank you for that question. The rent that would be paid under this scheme would be at the local housing allowance level. So it would be set at the level that we have locally for local housing allowance. I suppose the positive for the landlord would be that they would have a guaranteed income stream. It may not be quite as high as they would like within the private sector, but they could enter into agreement with us for up to 20 years and they'd have a guaranteed rental on that property, and also it would be managed on their behalf as well. So there are benefits to them of entering that scheme.
Thank you for that answer, Caris. And the Deputy Leader wants to come back in.
Thank you very much, Leader. Thanks, Caris. Do we review that local housing allowance every year, and does it go up in line with inflation? Because, most people's rents would. Thanks.
It is reviewed annually. Whether it goes up with inflation, I would have to get that information for you, Councillor Gebbie, but it is reviewed annually.
Thank you for that. My understanding that it's not something that we set, but we'll check on that. And we now have Councillor Spanzer, please.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Farr asked to look at finance, but if I could expand a little bit further. Firstly, on the numbers at the start of the report, it mentions I think it's at 20 to 30 currently. I was wondering what the split is between private sector landlords and RSLs. Yeah, so it's generally 2.3. The scheme's been 20, 30 properties in recent years, with a split between private rent sector and RSLs. Just wondering what the split has been in the past. And lastly, on the finance itself, because in the section 8, the financial implication, it does say there's financial risk associated. To accept that, but it's a great scheme we need to promote. But it also does say that the additional resource will be required in the housing department. So I'm trying to get clear in my mind that what sort of financial resource is going to be required from BCBs. It may be grant funded in part, but it sounds like in paragraph 3 there will be an additional resource required from BCBC as well. So I'd like to clarify that if I could, please.
Thank you for that question. Councillor Spanzer. Caris, please.
Yes, thank you for that. I mean, we have an average figure of the number of properties that are currently accessing this scheme, and we would hope to at least maintain that or increase it through in the coming years. With regards to the finance, I think this is something that we will have to keep an eye on. If there is a large take-up by private sector landlords for this, then we may have to increase the resource that we put in to actually support this scheme. But I would suggest that's almost like an investor-save expenditure, because actually if we can get people into more permanent type accommodation, from an outcome position, it's a lot better for them individually. From a cost position, it would be cheaper for the authority actually for people to be in that type of accommodation than be for paying for some of the more expensive placements that we are currently funding. So we will have to monitor that position, Councillor Spanswick, and if there is a large take-up of this scheme, we'd obviously have to look at the funding needed to support it going forward.
Thank you for that, Caris. I can see you wanted to come back in, Councillor Spanswick, then I'll bring in Councillor Good. Thank you.
Thanks, Leader. Just to clarify the numbers, that the properties 20. What is the split between RSLs and? I just wondering, is it a tiny amount of private sector and the majority are registered landlords? The current setup now, or what has been? So, what are the numbers of private landlords actually participating in the scheme now?
What we have in here is indicative indicators. What I would need to do for you is get a breakdown of what that would be between our RSL and private sector landlords. I can provide that for you, though.
Thank you for that, Caris. Thank you, Councillor Spanswick. I'll now bring in Councillor Good, please.
Thank you, Leader. Just for Councillor Spanswick's information, really, I guess the thing I'd flag is that I think we're right to keep an eye on whether this increased cost or not, but I think we all should, all have to be cognizant of the number of private rentals available in Bridgend. And I think realistically, although this does have some advantages for landlords, I think a lot of the landlord sector will be looking at this and thinking, well, actually, we can realise higher rents through the private sector proper rather than through this scheme. So this represents a useful stopgap for us in terms of housing. But I don't think it's something that's going to be a large programme, or I don't anticipate it being a large programme. But we'll certainly keep an eye on the costs, and I think but realistically, I can't imagine that we will see a larger number than 30 coming forward to take part. Thanks, Leader.
Thank you for that, Councillor Good. The recommendations be moved and seconded. Is everyone in agreement, please? Thank you.
Aye.
Colleagues, we will now move on to the first report from the Corporate Director for Education and Family Support, and that is on the appointment of local authority governors. Lindsay, please.
Thank you, Leader. The purpose of this report is to seek approval from Cabinet for the appointment of local authority governors to the school governing bodies listed at paragraphs 3.1 and 3.2. In accordance with Council guidance, officers have considered applications received for current vacancies for local authority governor positions on school governing bodies. For the 4 current local authority governor vacancies at the 4 schools identified at paragraph 3.1, the applicants met the approved criteria for the appointment as a local authority governor, and there was no competition for vacancies. There was, however, competition for 1 vacancy at 1 school, and the applicants are detailed at paragraph 3.2. The officer panel scrutinised the information provided in accordance with the aforementioned approved guidance. Both applicants have a previous experience being a governor on school governing bodies. Information provided by applicants on the areas of specific knowledge, experience and skills was fully considered. The officer panel recommends the appointment of Christine Harris due to her overall education experience, her more recent role as a former education professional at a school, her more recent previous experience as a school governor, as well as good relevant experience and knowledge of education issues. It's important to note, however, Leader, that officers welcomed Joe Ruddy's application and noted his past experience as a school governor, his significant experience at a senior level within the public sector, and his previous knowledge of organisational policies, interactions with multi-agencies in the wider community. Therefore, Leader, I take you to the recommendations of paragraph 9.
Thank you for that. Lindsay. Councillor Blundell, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to, first of all, I'll move the recommendations and the directors outlined there. I'd just also like to thank everyone who put their name forward to be a governor. It is a very important task in our schools. So thank you for that, and also for members and for the wider public. You don't just need to be a councillor to be an LEA governor. There are plenty of vacancies in our schools, and I just urge, as I always do, for members and members of the public to come forward and be governors, because they are vital for our school governance and the way schools are run. So thank you for that.
Thank you for moving the recommendations. Do I have a seconder for the recommendations, please? Thank you, Councillor Williams. Is everyone in agreement with the recommendations, please?
Aye.
Thank
Aye.
you, colleagues. We will now receive the first report of the Corporate Director for Communities on the procurement of the redevelopment of the Grand Pavilion in Porthcawl. Janine, please.
Yes, many thanks, Leader. So for the purposes of the recording, I'm Janine Nightingale, the Corporate Director for Communities. So Cabinet, the purpose of the report today in front of you is to seek agreement to progress the tender for the construction works for the Grand Pavilion in Porthcawl. And that's following the completion of the design and the planning process, which is underway. The report also provides a brief update on the design and associated works for the project, relevant to progressing the tender process and project delivery. So a little bit of background to the project, although I know we have had a number of Cabinet reports previously on this, but a little bit of background. In January, back in at the start of this year, we were informed at the Council that a bid to the UK Government's Levelling Up Fund for the Bridgend constituency had been successful, and that the Council would be awarded a circa 18 million, 17.998 million towards the redevelopment of the Grand Pavilion in Porthcawl. But it wasn't until May of this year when the Council was in receipt of the official Memorandum of Understanding, and why that was important is because it set out the terms and conditions of that grant award. Now, the approved bid is for the redevelopment, as we know, of that Grade 2 listed Grand Pavilion. It will address, importantly, issues of risk to the building fabric, and it will also meet the needs and aspirations of local people for extending and improving arts, heritage and library services. Now, the current terms of the grant award set out that the project would need to be completed by the spring of 2025. However, we know we've had several conversations have taken place with our Levelling Up Fund monitoring team, and we have raised concerns that this date and informal agreement won't be met, because if we don't get onto site till spring next year, it is a 2-year programme. So we've asked, can we profile the delivery and the finance of this Levelling Up grant until 2026, March 26. So it's now imperative that the project progresses at pace through the detailed design stage, where we're getting to design freeze now. We need to seek to get planning permission approved, and that the procurement of a professional service team and main contractor is in place so that we can start those works to commence in spring of next year. Now, Cabinet, we brought a report to you last month in October, which sets out the next steps in the project and to seek agreement from you to procure and complete the necessary detailed design work, which will inform the tender process for the main construction work. Since the October report, we've approved a cost consultant, and they've been appointed to work alongside the design team and to support the drafting of the tender documentation and the process. The REBA Stage 4 detailed design work is well underway, and the project is working towards a design freeze over the next couple of weeks and in early December. An external project manager has also been appointed to oversee the REBA Stage 4 design, and there are design team meetings now taking place every week in order to inform that tender process. We've got a project board overseeing the project progress, and we also have a procurement subgroup to look in particular at that aspect. Now, the procurement subgroup is taking advice from both internal and external legal advisors, in addition to the authority's procurement manager and officers from within the project team itself. Now, as with any major capital project, the tender process will have to be completed in order to confirm information on both the cost and the programme, and to inform the decision by Cabinet to award the contract. So a future Cabinet report would present the conclusion of the tender process and would set out all of the financial and contractual implications to the authority of awarding a contract for construction works at the Grand Pavilion. Now, in order to progress this project in line with the timescales set out by the Levelling Up Fund programme, and in order to inform the contract process, this report now seeks your approval to progress that tender process for the construction works. Now, the one thing I want to draw your attention to is Section 8 of the report, please, Cabinet. A couple of important things in here. Now, the LUF application itself encourages a minimum of 10% funding match on each project from the local authority. And this was set out in a report to Council in July of 22. At that meeting, the Council approved 1.99 million from Bridgend Council towards the scheme, and that's our 10%. However, what we are doing is we are looking at other sources of funding to assist, and that 10%, including possibly a grant from the National Lottery Heritage. So please may I take you to the recommendations in Section 9 of the report, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you for that report, Janine. I will bring in Councillor Good first, then Councillor Farr, then Councillor Blundell. Councillor Good, please.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Janine, for taking us through the report. I'm happy to formally move it. You note in your preamble, Janine, that you brought to us last month for the design work, and that at the time we took the decision to suspend our usual procurement rules in order to proceed, as you've noted, at pace with the design work, because we are feeling pressure on the project. I just wanted to make sure that you could confirm that with this tender, we will go forward with BCBC's procurement process in full, rather than using RWENS, which is obviously a different model. And also, if we had any idea of when we're likely to hear whether the reprofiling from LUF will be allowed. I know the fourth round of LUF was announced yesterday, and I know some of those projects already look unlikely to be delivered in the time that they've allowed for that bid. So it would just be good to understand when we think we are likely to hear from LUF about the reprofiling. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that question. Councillor Good, Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Good. Yes, the tender, the main contractor will be tendered and procured via BCBC. The contract will sit with us. That's your answer to that one, Councillor Good, hopefully. And the second question really is, I've been having conversations with LUF about the profiling of the project. And they realise this is not a problem just for Bridgend. There's a number of projects, because of the late start to this round 2, that have been delayed starting. So what the team have said to us, they've given us verbal assurances that we can have a timescale until March 26, which is where we are. However, they haven't written formally to confirm that, because what they have said is they want to reprofile the whole of it and not just BCBC individually, which I think is probably fair enough. Now, the other thing as well is what they want to see. They want to see the contract price, and they also want to see the programme of works and the end date as suggested by the contractor before they look at that reprofile. But I think what is quite important to say right now is that once we complete the tender process, we will be coming back to Cabinet and to Council to sign off the works, and we will be seeing what the amount is, but we won't proceed to award that contract until we know that LUF have written to us with that amended timeframe. Because unless we can carry over that funding until spring of 26, we won't be able to start this project. So that is a risk, but that's a risk on an awful lot of the phase 2 LUF bids. So hopefully that should provide some reassurance. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Janine, and that is a reassurance. That is a significant risk. I know it's a risk that's been identified by all local authorities across the UK that have levelling up funding projects, and indeed there was an announcement yesterday about an extension to timescale. We haven't seen the details of that yet, but I know it's been broadly welcomed by colleagues in local government and indeed the Welsh Local Government Association, because this project can only go ahead with that funding from UK government. Councillor Farr is next, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'm happy to second the report. I think Councillor Good has already asked the question I was going to ask. Just to say that, we need to ensure that we've got it in writing, if we can extend that time frame. So it's already been answered. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Farr. And next we have Councillor Blundell, please.
Thank you, Chair. You alluded to it a bit in your presentation, Janine, about outside funders for our 10%. Has that work already started, or because obviously bids, they do take a time to come together, don't they? They're not done overnight. So has that work already begun? Because obviously we need to be able to hit the ground running as soon as possible.
Thank you for that, Councillor Blundell. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Blundell. We have had informal conversations with funders such as National Lottery Heritage. They are starting to open their next bidding round. This is a project that they would like to see come forward, but again, they also require some information about timeframes and the cost of the scheme overall, because if they're going to contribute, they want to know what their percentage contribution would be. So actually, in a way, we can't really start that process until we complete the tender. There's quite a lot of work that will spring into action after that. But yes, has the process started? Well, we've started conversations with them. But so once we have that information, we can look to submit an application.
Thank you for that, Councillor Blundell and Janine. And of course, we will continue to identify other potential funding sources and seek them out wherever they may be. Councillor Williams is next.
Well, I suppose you just sort of touched on my area, and that is other funders, I suppose, third-party funders or friends of the pavilion, I'm sure would want to see this a successful project. I also note that a future report will detail the financial implications, and I think it'd be worth having probably alongside that is a lessons learned from similar projects that have been undertaken, so we can, just make sure that we learn lessons and we get the best possible project going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Williams. Janine, please.
Yes, absolutely, Councillor Williams. I couldn't agree more. We will definitely look at other capital projects we've got ongoing. And I think the important bit here with the pavilion is there's two forms of contracts currently that are widely used, JCT and then we have the NEC form of contract. And so what we need to ensure is the contract that we get into for the pavilion is the right one for this building and the heritage of this building. So absolutely, I would be more than happy to do that alongside, because by the time we get to the end of the tender process, we will have had those conversations and know which form of contract would be the most suitable. So absolutely, let's do that.
Thank you for that, Janine. I suppose you've used some acronyms there that perhaps it might just be helpful. Deputy Leader's whispered in my ear about NEC, but I'm sure that can be explained there. Next, we've got Councillor Good, please.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Williams sort of stole my thunder slightly there as well. I think speaking of certain other projects that we may have had experience of recently, I think it would be good to understand a bit more about what the NEC contract entails and how that does protect us. And I think as well to look at how are we, or what proportion of risk are we looking at in terms of the pavilion, bearing in mind things that we have learned from other heritage projects within the borough.
Thank you for that, Councillor Good. Janine, please.
Yes, no, absolutely, Councillor. We're taking advice on that. Now we have procurement specialists assisting us with that to see which would be the most appropriate contract. The difference between the two is a JCT is a straightforward, this is how much it'll cost and this is the time contract, whereas an NEC is more of a design and build contract in that you work with the contractor. They're two very different projects and they have different risks and benefits associated with them both. So what we need to do is conclude this tender process and then see which is the best fit for us contractually moving forward. Because what will be really important, of course, is we have £20 million in the budget, 18 from LUF, and we have this 2 million, albeit we're trying to look if there is any other monies available. So we do need to make sure we can deliver this in the most responsible way. We are looking at whether we can cap that tender at a level, at a market rate, and then have a very healthy contingency in place. But more of that detail will be apparent at the back end of the tender process when we bring that report back to you in spring next year. And we will make sure we have a lot of detail and we have that discussion before we ask you to award that tender.
Thank you for that, Janine, and it'll be very helpful for a full explanation at that point of the future phases in the process for this project, where there is an opportunity to consider the cost profile of the project, whether or not we include or exclude aspects of the project that are there at the outset. We know that is limited to an extent by the requirements of UK government in terms of the Levelling Up funding award, but we will want to obviously take every opportunity to minimise risk, financial risk and risk around time scale. I know that we'll be having, it's proposed that this will be referred to and is on the forward work programme for Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting in February. I certainly welcome the input of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee into the process. I think that will be helpful in terms of identifying risk and making recommendations about how we can manage that risk. But of course, managing the risk can come at a cost, can't it? And how that risk is borne and who it is borne by, and that will be part of the discussion at the next stage of this project. And can you just respond to that point generally about risk? Because we can try and limit some of the risk. Is there some limit? Some risks that are more difficult to identify because we will be working with a historic building that is a listed building, and like all these projects, they're unique because of the historic nature, and unique historic nature of that building.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yeah, absolutely. We have carried out quite a lot of survey work on the building currently, and that will inform the tender. But of course, some of what we're calling destructive survey, where we literally get into the walls itself, can't be undertaken until the building is vacated. Now, Arwen will be in situ right up until the end of this year. That one of their last productions there is the pantomime this year. And after that is over, they will decant out of the building, and we will be able to undertake those more intrusive survey work to really ensure that when we appoint a contractor, we have as much of the risk is known as possible. Of course, we know that we can never be 100% certain, can we, with any heritage building, that what we will find when we really do start the works. But I think what we have ensured is that we do the destructive surveys and that we have a very large risk and contingency pot, larger than we would normally allow. It's normally around 10%, but we want to have a pot that's much higher than that from past experience, and for, to ensure that we can restore this beautiful building to where it needs to be. So at the end of the tender process and at the end of the destructive surveys or intrusive surveys should be able to give you a bit more of an idea of where we are in terms of risk. But that's absolutely one of the key things we need to manage with the building of this age. Yeah.
So just to be clear, it's not possible at this stage because of the nature of those intrusive surveys to carry them out because the building is still very much operational.
Yeah.
And it will
Absolutely.
require parts of the building to be closed off, for example, to carry out those intrusive surveys.
Absolutely, Leader. We've done as much survey work as we can with the building and occupation. Once the when stop occupation of the building, we'll be able to, for instance, turn off electricity, do some survey work, which we, and there's an awful lot of safety involved with some of the intrusive survey work we will do. So we have to have an unoccupied building at that point in time. So yeah, that will be done in early spring, and then all of that work will be fed into the tender process. So.
Thank you for that, Janine. Recommendation's been moved and seconded. Is everyone in agreement with the recommendation, please?
Aye. Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. And of course, we will receive a further report following the next stage, and we look forward to that report to the Overall Scrutiny Committee meeting as well. Thank you, Janine. We will now move on to the second report, the Corporate Director for Communities, and that is on the proposed energy company obligation for and the local authority signing up the Statement of Intent and Memorandum of Understanding. Janine, please.
Yes, many thanks, Leader. The purpose of this report is to update Cabinet, as the Leader has just said, on, I'm going to call it EcoFlex, Leader, because it's a bit shorter than the energy company obligation. And also to propose that as Bridgend County Council, Borough Council, we adopt a joint statement of intent and we enter into a memorandum of understanding in order to participate in this scheme. The report proposes to Cabinet that we agree to become a member of EcoFlex, and that myself as the Corporate Director of Communities should be the dedicated responsible person for the scheme, that we delegate authority to myself along with my colleagues, Chief Officer Legal and Regulatory and Chief Officer Finance, to make any required amendments and to agree final versions of the draft memorandum of understanding and the joint statement of intent, that we delegate authority to myself to sign the final approved memorandum of understanding and to publish the final approved joint statement of intent and update these documents as appropriate, and also delegate authority to myself to accept a funding offer of 16,000 from Welsh Government to support the delivery of EcoFlex in line with the financial information contained within Section 8 of this report. So, a little bit of background, Leader. The Energy Company Obligation, ECO, is a UK government scheme that places legal obligations on all energy suppliers in the UK to determine to deliver energy efficient measures to domestic premises, which are designed in essence to tackle fuel poverty and help reduce carbon emissions. The scheme is administered by the Office of Gas and Electricity Markets, Ofgem, on behalf of the Department for Business Energy and Industrial Strategy, BEIS. ECO4 provides a legal obligation on energy suppliers to reduce heating costs for low-income and vulnerable households by delivering energy efficiency and heating measures. Now, under the Ofgem guidance, the flexible element to ECO4, known as the EcoFlex, allows local authorities to set their own criteria for identifying and targeting households in their area that might meet the eligibility requirements. EcoFlex is therefore a household referral mechanism within the wider ECO4 scheme, which enables a local authority to collaborate with an obligated energy supplier and third parties, such for instance as Citizen Advice or NHS, professional healthcare workers, to tailor energy efficiency schemes to their respective geographical area. So Eco4 applies to measures installed up until the 31st of March 2026, and it's available only to owner-occupied households and private rented sector households that meet the eligibility requirements. So eligible residents of BCBC are currently able to access Eco4 through any agency's energy supplier or agency working on the behalf. But BCBC is currently not a participant in the flexible eligibility element of the Eco4 scheme. Participation in the Eco4 LA scheme requires the statement of intent to be published and coordinated in order to potentially broaden the range of households that are eligible for support. And that's the key bit. So in relation to Eco and any participation in the LA Flex, the obligated energy company must ensure the quality and competence of their supply chain. And I think that's really important, Cabinet, for us. And subsequent works to homes must comply with the Trustmark PAS 2035 standards and any other standard set out in the Ofgem guidance. PAS 2035 is a recognised quality standard for the retrofit and energy efficiency sector for housing. So that's what any energy company who is part of this scheme must ensure. Now, the current situation, where are we? Well, so the Cardiff Capital Region Cabinet have agreed that local authorities in the region should aim to work together where possible to develop a joint statement of intent and consider the most appropriate delivery models for Eco4 Flex and to market test to select relevant energy company partners. BCBC officers have participated in regional working and supported the CCR approach in developing this joint statement of intent, and that's appended to your report as Appendix 1, and a draft memorandum of understanding is in your report as Appendix 2. The MOU covers the relationship with the energy supplier and incorporates all routes outlined in the statement of intent. And the joint statement of intent is appended in its current draft form and sets out the routes by which households may be considered as eligible through Eco4 Flex. And these routes, there's a number of routes, are set out in paragraph 3.3 of the report. I won't go through the routes in detail, but just to say they cover areas such as low income, owner-occupiers and private rented sector with low levels of income. There's combined proxy eligibility, such as houses in a lower SOPA output area, households receiving council tax, households who are vulnerable to the cold. There's also a Route 3, which is an NHS referral. That's an important route. Those households who have been identified for their doctor or GP as low income or vulnerable. And there's also bespoke targeting. This is referred to as Route 4, and bespoke targeting, we can submit an application to BEIS where we've identified a low income and vulnerable household who isn't already eligible under the criteria of the routes above. So the Memorandum of Understanding, as I've said, is appended in its current draft form at Appendix 3. It gives a broad understanding of the key objectives of the scheme, the principles of collaboration and the respective roles and responsibilities of all parties. A selection process was undertaken by CCR, which resulted in E.ON being selected as the proposed energy supply partner for the Vale of Glamorgan, Bridgend, Cardiff, RCT and Merthyr Tydfil Local Authority. And subject to us participating in the EcoFlex 4 scheme, the draft memo subject to us agreeing to the draft memo, we will work together on delivering the EcoFlex scheme. An important bit, though, is to satisfy Ofgem guidance. It is proposed that the Corporate Director of Communities, myself, is the dedicated responsible person for the Eco4 Flex scheme, and in consultation with the Chief Officer, my colleagues of Legal and Regulatory Services and the Chief Finance Officer. We are delegated to make any alterations to Appendix 1 and Appendix 2 as we see would be appropriate. Welsh Government has agreed as well, Leader, to grant us 16,000 to each local authority to cover some of the costs of participating in Eco4. In addition, it is also proposed that LAs that a £300 registration fee is payable by the energy company for each application that is put in place, and this registration fee is charged by the LA to the energy company, and it will contribute towards the costs incurred in administrating the scheme. So please may I take you to the recommendations in section 9 of the report, Leader.
Thank you for that detailed report, Janine. I will bring in Councillor Spanzik, then Councillor Farmer and the Deputy Leader. Councillor Spanzik, please.
Thank you, Leader. Janine for the report, and first off, just to put it into order, I'd like to move the recommendations and welcome this scheme taking it forward. I mean, as pointed out, there's already a scheme there and the public can enter into it already and apply. But this gives us the opportunity to broaden the sort of scope of residents of the county borough who can tap into this money, and it is welcome because it's coming from the profits of the energy companies who are not short of profits. So if we can tap in to more of those profits to broaden energy efficiency and reduce fuel poverty across the country, but it is to be welcomed. Albeit this report is mainly entering into the statement of intent. My question is more about perhaps the practicalities of how it operates, because there's some great stuff there, but what I'm not clear on, I'm not sure whether Jean can clarify this today or it's something for another day, because firstly, I suppose people, I'm assuming, can self-refer themselves or not. To me, people out there who are aware of the scheme as it stands now, I don't apply. I didn't apply to them, but maybe it could with us joining it with the broadening the range. But it's the actual practical work that's undertaken in paragraph 2.4. It says, for examples of qualifying retrofit measures include solid wall, cavity, floor and loft insulation, and then they keep it and/or repair and replacement of broken heating systems, and the installation of renewable heating systems such as the air source heat pumps and solar panels. So solar panels are well known. Loads of people seem to have them. Air source heat pumps, more for the future, they're happening now, but it's still new. But the way that's written, it says and/or repair. So if somebody's got a really old gas boiler, a gas heating system, and it's costing them a fortune to run, does it mean that because eventually gas is going to be phased out and gas boilers, gas heating systems won't be with us in new properties in the future? But would this allow people to repair or replace an existing heating system as opposed to having a new air source heat pump? Because I can imagine some people are still going to be a bit wary about air source heat pumps, future maintenance costs, and a different way of living in a way, with the way you heat the property, with having the windows and insulation, everything else right with it, not just the air source heat pump. So it's down to the nitty gritty of how it works and what can be done in particular properties moving forward. And lastly, the finance. I think the 16,000 is welcome. I was wondering whether or not the £300 per applicant, whether that can be increased if it's coming from the property. Could we charge more? Do we know if that will cover the cost? Because it will take up a resource of officers in doing it over the course of time. So let's make sure we're covering every penny that's cost from the energy suppliers.
Thank you for that, Councillor Spanzik. A number of points and questions. I'm sure that Janine will be able to answer them. Thank you, Janine.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Sorry, I seem to be just coughing a little bit then. With regards to which is the most appropriate retrofit measure, that's something that will be discussed, Councillor Spanzik, with the applicant and E.ON. For instance, it's not suitable for all properties to have air source heat pumps or solar panels, depending on whether they are a terraced house, house of the garden, etc. So I think the idea is that we apply the most efficient scheme to the property that's come forward as part of the scheme. So whether they get a gas boiler, for instance, replaced, it isn't our preferred solution. We would prefer people to move to more energy efficient systems, but that may not always be possible. So what we've been advised is that E.ON, we are in this scheme just, in essence, just the people who refer. We're the people who see if you're eligible, and we get your application and we refer you as the local authority. We're not liable for any of the work or any of the conversations that take place after that. That is for E.ON to work with the resident at. So they will then decide between them, they will come and survey the house, which are the most appropriate energy efficient measures that will benefit the resident. So I don't know whether that helps you with some of that understanding there. And the second bit then, can the £300 be increased to cover costs? I'm not sure that it can at this stage, because that's something that Ofgem have levied, that we can ask for as an administration fee from E.ON for every applicant we deal with. Of course, you must remember we've also have the £16,000 from Welsh Government. So what we're going to do is to use that money plus the application fees for each applicant to offset the cost of this, and it's going to be carried out by our team in-house. So thank you, Councillor Spanswick.
Okay, thanks, Janine.
Thank you for that, Janine, and I think that has to be stressed and emphasised at every opportunity, in every contact with residents about this scheme, that this council is not appointing the energy supplier to install any works, and there will be no liability and there will be no responsibility that will lie with the energy supplier. That will need to be made clear. I'll bring Councillor Farr in next, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Janine, for a very thorough report. I'd like to officially second the report and ask some of my questions. So, Janine, is the £16,000 a one-off payment, please, or will this be annual reoccurrence? First question. Second question, how many houses will they do in the borough? And my last question, can we have assurance that there will be no financial cost on to BCBC, please? Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. Councillor Farr, I hope you've made a note, Janine, and answer those questions, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Farr. I'm afraid the 16,000 is a one-off. This is until the scheme is until 2026. So we are to use that monies to subsidise the post up until that time. How many homes can benefit? Well, of course, Councillor Farr, it's for residents to come forward and to apply for the scheme, and if they're eligible, I'd like to think we can try and process as many residents as possible that are eligible for this scheme to assist with fuel poverty. And is there any financial cost to BCBC? Well, the only cost at this stage to BCBC is to administer the scheme, and we're getting the £16,000 from Welsh Government as the one-off, plus the £300 per applicant. There is no liability for BCBC at the moment. We are just, as per the agreement, the people who connect the residents, check their eligibility and connect them with E.ON. E.ON are completely liable for undertaking the works. They have to comply with the Ofgem guidance and the trust marks if they are to subcontract within the supply chain. So there's no liability to BCBC for any funding of these schemes going forward. I think important to note that each scheme is a guarantee for 2 years after the works is complete, and Ofgem will be working in that arena at that area. So there's no perceived cost to us as a local authority apart from the administration of the scheme, that we're hoping this amount of money at this stage should be enough to administer. Leader, thank you.
Thank you for that, Janine. Next, we've got Councillor Getty, please. Deputy Leader.
Thanks very much, Leader. Thank you very much for the report. I do have a couple of questions, and I appreciate that we're only signing the Memorandum of Understanding at this point, but I would like a further report on this. And one of the reasons that I'd like that report is I'd like to ensure that we do not incur any costs in relation to this scheme. I don't think we can afford to. But also, if I take you to Route 3, the NHS referral, I didn't know when a doctor or GP became able to assess somebody's financial needs. And I'm really quite concerned about that. How are we going to promote this with them? Is there any sign up from our NHS colleagues that they are going to indeed send people our way? Because at this point it's just a route, but there's no evidence to suggest that that's already in place. And I would like to understand that. I think it's really important as well. And I know that the regional cabinet have signed up to how this scheme is going to be identified, who is eligible. They've made the eligibility criteria. I'd like that reviewed at some point, please. I do think we need to review that, and I do think it needs to come here to be reviewed. I'm not sure quite who is advising or guiding them on that sort of eligibility criteria, who is doing that, because that should come from Welfare State, which has already given us guidance. So I'm not sure how that's been achieved, if I'm honest. Thanks very much, Leader.
Thank you for that, Deputy Leader. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Leader. I think perhaps I'll be able to help you there. It's been a collaboration of the local authorities that has come up with the bespoke criteria across the 10 authorities in CCR, and of course we are a subset of that, aren't we, working with E.ON. So that's where hopefully that's where that has come from. So if we can provide you with more information on that, absolutely we will. And a further report when we get further down the route with this, yeah, to ensure there are no costs. We're not liable for any costs here, but if we can give you that assurance, we will. With regard to the NHS referral route, I think it won't be for doctors to determine income levels, but it will be to determine whether they have health conditions that might be impacted by living in a cold home. It will then be for us to determine income levels, whether that referral can take place, because that is one of the most important roles for us as a local authority, is to have the evidence and check that people are eligible under those criteria.
Thanks very much, Janine. But just to go back, it says SAP bans D2G households that have been identified by their doctor or GP as low income and vulnerable. So actually that isn't what it says, and GPs can't do that. They can identify vulnerable, but they certainly can't identify low income. It wouldn't be their assessment.
Janine, please.
Well, absolutely. Maybe we need to put an amendment, a note today on that it won't be the GP that determines income levels. It will be BCBC through checks. But on this referral, it will be for the GP to determine if there is a health condition and whether that's the referral into the system. I'm quite happy for that to go as an amendment to the report.
Thank you for that, Janine. Yeah, I think that's perhaps where it just needs greater clarity that the general practitioner will be identifying the vulnerability and vulnerability to cold, not the financial.
I think it's
aspect.
about us working together really to ensure that we can put these people forward for the scheme.
Okay, thank you for that, Janine. And next we've got Councillor Williams, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. It's just under the financial implications, I suppose, and the final point is not considered at this time that additional resources are required. So we're assuming that we can administer this within the £300 registration fee, but I just want assurance, I suppose, that, because given our financial position, we certainly cannot take on any extra financial burden or risk. So what would be the, or how confident are we that we can deliver within that £300? The other one, the interface with the potential benefactors, I suppose, will that be digital or will that be face-to-face? How will we actually gather the information and make that assessment? Will it be purely digital, or are we looking to set up face-to-face application process?
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. With regards to the funding of the posts, we have the £16,000 from Welsh Government and then £300 per applicant. After that, Councillor Williams, the team leader in sustainability has assured me that they have the resource to be able to cover this at the level they think would be appropriate. Of course, we will need to review that if we find it is a different situation. But as it currently stands, we will be able to take on this role within the team, funded within the money that's available. So we are comfortable, because absolutely we won't be putting any more financial pressure on that team or the council itself. With regard to how do we interact, I think it's a culmination of things really. It will be digital, it may be telephone, and it would be face-to-face as well. It's whatever medium suits those individuals better, because not everybody has access to Wi-Fi, etc. So if people would be more comfortable coming in to see us face-to-face, we would be happy to do that as well. So it will be, dare I say, a hybrid system, Councillor Williams. Yeah, so this Eco4 itself is funded up until March 26. So there's a couple of years of it. Yeah, and another scheme might be introduced after that, but what this commits us to is a resource and the scheme up until that point, yeah.
Thank you for that, Jane. And next we've got Councillor Spancer, please.
Thank you, Leader. It's just as I moved the report at the beginning, to add in the amendment I suggested that was raised by the Deputy Leader and suggested by Janine, to put an amendment there regards how the GB and the health service works within it, but also to add another recommendation that we have as soon as practical a further report on the actual practicalities of how this whole scheme works, because it's just sort of the wordy bit today, the legal bit was signed up to the memorandum of understanding, but we urgently need the report to flush out all the things that's been raised, and including the point of the fact that we're not employing additional officer for this post. This work will be done within existing resources, so the funds will have to ease some pressure perhaps, but we need that report. I'll add that to the recommendations. We have that report as soon as possible with the whole scheme practicalities.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, and that's part of the promotion of the scheme, isn't it? But also making sure that people are very clear about the role of this authority and the benefits as well. Okay, so the recommendation has been moved and seconded. Is everyone in agreement with those recommendations, please, colleagues? Thank you. In which case we will move on to the third report from the Corporate Director for Communities today, and that is on the proposed service level agreement with Torfaen County Borough Council. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'm just going to find my place in the report. So, indeed, so the purpose of this third report this afternoon is to seek permission for BCBC to enter into a regional people and skills SLA, a service level agreement with Torfaen County Borough Council. Now, this agreement seeks to develop a consistent approach across 9 local authorities within Cardiff Capital Region to develop skills projects under the People and Skills theme of the United Kingdom's government's Shared Prosperity Fund. It is proposed this will be led by Torfaen County Borough Council, and that the following local authorities are involved along with Bridgend. We will have Blaenau Gwent with us, Caerphilly, Cardiff Council, Merthyr, and Newport, RCT, the Vale of Glamorgan, and of course Torfaen itself. So a little bit of background to this, Leader. BCBC, you as Cabinet approved the recommendations in the Shared Prosperity Fund Cabinet report back in the 19th of July 2022. The report set out the funding arrangements that are put in place by the UK government. It was the Shared Prosperity Fund was the fund that came forward to replace the European funding that we had. And in that Cabinet report back in July 22, you sought approval for RCT to become the lead authority for the Cardiff Capital Region, CCR, for delivering Shared Prosperity Fund for us. Now, the report also gave a delegation to myself as the Corporate Director to submit to RCT our local investment plan for BCBC, information in delivering our proportion of the funding allocation, and to feed this into any regional investment plan that went to UK government. And as part of that, our regional plan, we have set up a South East Wales group of directors, regional directors. I'm a member of that, and the regional directors have proposed the need for a regional approach to developing skills across CCR. and this would be under the Shared Prosperity Fund's People and Skills theme. And it was proposed that Torfaen County Borough Council would lead and develop a service level agreement for consideration for each participating local authority to sign up to. Now, Appendix 1 of this report sets out the People and Skills a service level agreement for the 9 local authorities we've talked about, and we are agreeing to work together, led by Torfaen, to develop a regional approach to a skills project which will benefit residents in our county borough. It is proposed that a People and Skills regional support team be funded by a contribution from each local authority, and they will be established to manage regional commissioning, a single point of contact for key strategic partners, and they will be the administrative support for regional meetings that improve employability and skills provision in South East Wales. Through the agreement, the partners and the parties will establish a People and Skills Strategic Management Board, comprising 1 representative from each local authority, and it's proposed that the Enterprise and Employability Manager from Bridgend will represent our council on that Strategic Management Board, and they will report back to the Bridgend Economic Partnership, which in turn reports to our BCBC Economic Programme Board. So that's the governance route for you, Cabinet. So if agreed by Cabinet today, it's anticipated that following entering into the SLA, work will begin to identify the skills areas supported by partners that can benefit our Bridgend residents. Now, important to note, Leader, is that each of the 9 local authorities in CCR who are part of this People and Skills regional project will make a financial contribution to support the team, and the proposed contribution from BCBC over a period from 2023-24 up to 24-25 is set at 29,000. That is already allocated within the Shared Prosperity Fund local investment plan. Therefore, there's no additional funding that's required from ourselves at BCBC for this. And please, Leader, may I take you to the recommendations in section 9 of this report.
Thank you for that, Janine. Councillor Farr, please.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Janine, for presenting this report. As colleagues will be aware, a couple of weeks ago, we launched the multiplied part of the SPF, which was quite a success, and there was several partner agencies present at that launch. What I wanted to ask, Janine, is this the most cost-effective way for us to go forward? Please, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farr. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Absolutely, Councillor Farr. Regional working on things like skills and employment and training is definitely done best at a regional level, because skills don't know any boundaries. So collaborating together ensures we get the right economies of scale here, and we can deliver this training, this partnership seamlessly across the region. So I can say with confidence, yes, it's the best way to deliver this. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Janine. And then Councillor Good, please.
Thank you, Leader. Just a quick one from me, Janine, sort of adding on to what Councillor Farr has asked, really. How does this fit in with our existing employability service within Bridgend, and how are we ensuring that this actually isn't just creating an extra layer of admin to what is already quite a successful team within the borough?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Good.
Yeah.
Janine, please.
Thank you, Councillor Good. Absolutely. And it is the manager of that employability team who will sit on this regional partnership, just to ensure exactly what you've just said, to make sure that what we're proposing, the courses and the skills that we're proposing, fit seamlessly with our offer already in BCBC, and they add value. Because if we're already running a course of similar ilk, there's no point having another course regionally. So absolutely, the key thing about that management board is that we bring in the representatives in each of the councils that are already doing this work to ensure that we're adding value and not replicating what is already in place. So yeah, absolutely.
Councillor Good, you wanted to come back in?
Yeah, thanks, Leah. So just for clarity then, this isn't sort of something that would sort of reorganise and sort of take in what is existing within the borough. It's sort of complementary and sort of advisory about the skills needed across the region, rather than something that would say sort of come into the employability team in Bridgend and sort of change its structure and change how it works.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, I suppose put simply, it's almost like a gap analysis. If they have a look at what is being provided across the region and then look at what we need to do, for instance, there's an awful lot of training and upskilling for people in high carbon sectors to transition them to green industry and that type of thing. And there's quite a gap in the market for that training. So that's something they've identified. Lots of green skills training to get people to net zero. So what they're doing is looking at what the gaps are and hopefully fill in those. But it is complementary. But key is that it is delivered with the Indigenous staff in each local authority. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Janine. Deputy Leader, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. Thank you very much. I think this is a very helpful report, and I'm all for getting people in work. I think the one thing that I would query is you've mentioned a lot about officers, and they've talked about gap analysis, so I'm assuming that's a desktop analysis. I'd like to know what engagement has been done with people that are out there looking for work and employability skills, because there's no point us delivering something if we haven't asked people what they want first. Thanks very much.
Thank you for that, Deputy Leader. Janine, please.
No, absolutely, Deputy. That's what needs to happen next. I mean, this is us agreeing to collaborate together, and then what we need to do is all of that Indigenous engagement out there, speaking to people and finding out what would enhance skills, because this is what this is all about, is people and skills, and using that shared prosperity fund in the right way. Because again, we've only got this money for a time limited period, so to absolutely ensure we get the best out of it. You're right, and an important part of the employability service that we've got at the moment is all about communicating and matching people with the right set of skills to improve their life chances.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'm happy to move the recommendations. And I think the other thing that I would ask is that members are notified when these engagement sessions are going on, because quite often we're involved with people when they're asking for it. And I suppose my other ask is that they're not all based in Bridgend College. I would ask that community provision, so it's out in our wards, out in local communities where people do not have to get the bus to get there. And I mean that with the greatest of respect, but most jobs out there that are going, every one of them has an element of home working. People don't need to drive, they don't need to get public transport. If we want to improve their skills, we need to have those sessions out in the community going forward.
Thank you for that. Deputy Leader Janine, please.
Yeah, absolutely, Deputy. I can take that back. And I mean, that's something that I think the team are very mindful of. This is about reaching into areas and upskilling people in order that we improve their life chances. And you're right, if you're living in some communities and you want to get back into employment and you do want skills, the last thing we want you to do is to spend money getting somewhere to get those skills. So that's, I think, a key part of this is reaching into those communities. So an outreach piece will be a critical part of the delivery, I would suggest.
Thank you for that, Janine. And then finally, Councillor Good, please.
Thanks, Leader. Just to formally second the report, and I would just note further to the Deputy Leader's comments, Employability have done some really great work within my wards in terms of outreach, in terms of giving people accessibility, and even just making people aware that there are online courses as well that people can access, because I think that is really important, that we give people the understanding that actually it isn't just you have to come here physically for us to help you. There are plenty of opportunities online and through other avenues as well. Thank you, Leader.
Important point. Thank you for that. So recommendations have been moved and seconded. Is everyone in agreement, please? Aye. Thank you, colleagues. We'll now move on to the next report from the Corporate Director for Communities, and that is on the outcome of the consultation on the community recycling centres. Janine, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I think today has illustrated one thing, the broad depth of and range of services that sit within the Communities Directorate, for sure. So the purpose of somebody outside. Sorry. Thought somebody was asking a question then, Leader. It was some chatting, wasn't it? Okay, apologies for that. We thought somebody was asking a question, for those of you online. The purpose of the report here, Leader and Cabinet, is to advise you of the outcome of the consultation that we undertook about the closure of each community recycling centre for 1 day per week, in order that we can achieve the budget reduction proposal that was set out in our medium-term financial strategy, which was approved by Council on the 1st of March 2023. And it is to seek Cabinet's approval today to move ahead to the implementation phase of this proposal. So the background to this, just to remind you, it seems like a very long time ago now, Leader, but as part of our Council's medium-term financial strategy 23-24, a budget reduction was proposed against the budget for running of the 3 community recycling centres, and that's as part of my directorate, the Community Directorate's response to balancing our financial allocation within the level of service provision. A consultation on this went live on the 30th of June this year, and it closed on the 12th of September this year. And the consultation asked for views from our communities on the closure of each CRC site for 1 day per week. Now, we had a total of 407 responses, and there's a summary report included for you at Appendix A of this Cabinet report today. It's quite detailed, but I think on balance of the responses received, 98% of our community said that they visit the CRCs in Bridgend, so nearly all of our residents visit them, with 46.9%, nearly 50% saying they visit on a monthly basis, 21% visit on a 6-monthly basis, and then 14% said they visited weekly, and 15% said they visited fortnightly. So what is very, very clear is that these sites are well used, and I think that's reflected in our recycling targets overall for Bridgend. We have a fantastic recycling rate thanks to our communities. Now, Bryn Celyn was on the Bryn Celyn estate was the most visited site. Nearly 50% selected this as the site they went to. Tiggerston was the 41%, and my stake was only selected by 9% of respondents. Now, if Cabinet approve this proposal in front of you today, it's to close the CRC for 1 day per week. And officers will continue to liaise with the current contractor, which is Kia, to implement the closure days for each site, 1 per week. Automatic number plate recognition data for the sites will be used to inform the proposed day of the week that the site is closed. It would not be intended that the sites would all be closed on the same day or at weekends. At the moment, using the data we have, the proposed days for closure of the sites are as follow. Tiggerston on a Tuesday, my stake site on a Wednesday, and the Bryn Melyn site on a Thursday. And the reason for that is these are the days when these sites are used the least, and those days would stay the same every week. So if you live in my stake, your CRC would not be open on a Wednesday, but you go every other day apart from that. Implementation of the 1 day closure will have a staff consultation implications for Kia, but the incoming waste contractor that we've just appointed for the interim, the Plan B, that's the name of the contractor, will need to be made aware of the changes that we're proposing, but we are expecting not to deliver them until the 1st of April 2024. So it'll begin next year. Now, officers highlighted for Cabinet members that shortening the available hours will result in some extended queuing at peak times. However, this effect must be considered in the context of the financial position that we have in the authority and the importance of delivering savings going forward. So please may I take you to the recommendations in the report, Leader, and ask you to have a discussion on those and see whether we could take this proposal forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. I will bring in Councillor Spanzik first, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Thanks, Janine, for the report on the consultation. First, I'd like to move the recommendations in the report. But wider than that, I'd like to understand the bigger issue of the whole consultation process, because we've already made it. I'd like to double check, and maybe a question I should ask is, did we make a decision on budget cut subject to consultation, or did we make a decision to make the budget cut? Because if so, we now have a consultation before us saying that the majority, of slightly more than half, saying we shouldn't be making the cut. Well, I think 50% of people also use their weekends, and then half of those use remaining site most. There's also, I think, the question in do you feel the proposed closure at CRC sites 1 day a week should be agreed? 56% says no. Now, on that basis, if we're doing consultation, why? I'd like to understand the wider legal implications or the broad across the council. Why do consultation? Do we have to do consultation if we already made a decision? If we then do the consultation and the majority say they don't agree, what is then our position? Are we open to challenge? I accept we made the decision to make the cut to 50,000 to make that saving, and we'll have further decisions again in the future to make. But it does make a bit of a mockery about the consultation process. And maybe this should be part of the budget consultation with clear questions. Do you agree with X, Y, or Z, as opposed to less clear questions when it comes to do budget consultation? And then we do this because of the resource, the cost, the time delay in doing separate consultations for each individual cut that may require it. Doesn't make sense financially, or the Joe public out there, it won't make sense, because we know a decision in our hands that we're not going to agree with the consultation we've undertaken, basically, based on the decision we've already taken. I don't know if I'm making sense, but it doesn't make sense to me, the process that we currently use in BCBC when it comes to consultation on budget cuts.
Thanks, Councillor Spanzik. Janine, please.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Spanswick. Yeah, something we are looking at is this consultation piece. But what I would say, though, is that this consultation was about more than just closing the 1 day a week. It was for us to understand what mattered most to people, where they visited, how often they visited, and for us to have more due consideration of whether this proposal was something we could take forward. And what is very clear is that whilst it was a mixed consultation, if I'm fair, some people said they agreed and some didn't. There was quite a lot of positive comments in there about recycling, about reuse shops, about facilities. People were asking about the new pile CRC, when that would open. And they were looking forward to that because they knew they could have a wider range of recycling. So whilst I understand your comments about did we predetermine this, I mean, where we are is that this consultation was a bit more wide-reaching to understand people's habits with regard to the CRCs. I mean, I'm afraid we have some very, very difficult decisions in front of us to make as a council, as you're well aware, and dare I say, at this point, it's a £50,000 saving, and I would recommend that we go forward with it because it was mooted as part of the council budget saving report back in March. But we will be looking at working with CMB and yourselves how we consult on the budget proposals that would come out of this next round. So.
Thank you for that, Janine. I'll bring in the monitoring officer in now. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Spanzik, as you'll be aware, there are different consultation requirements depending on the statutory provisions that we are looking at. So for some service reductions, there is a statutory requirement. So if, for example, for schools, there's a very clear process that the authority has to follow with timescales and statutory consultees. However, for other consultations, it's best practice. It's not set out in statute, it's best practice. There is case law explaining how local authorities should approach consultation. There are some discretionary elements, including how long you consult for, who you consult with. But it's important to note that if you take the decision to consult, you should do it properly and have due regard to the results of the consultation, which is why this report is being presented to you today. Obviously, this does relate to a decision taken at the budget round last year, but it is a case that when those decisions are taken, they are taken subject to consultation if the consultation hasn't happened previously.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Kelly. And Councillor Spanzik. Deputy Leader is next, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. Thank you very much for the report. I'm quite happy to second the recommendations. I think we should just pay specific attention to a couple of bits, please. Not one of us have mentioned Pyle here. Are we still waiting for NRW licence? I am assuming so. And there is a considerable cost to that. We built the premises with the understanding that we would get a licence within a reasonable time. We still don't have it. And I'm going to say something about the consultation and the way we report things. I was really quite offended by some of the language that's been printed. And these are public reports. So I do think they need to be redacted somewhat before they're put anywhere in a public domain. Not for the comments, for the abuse, because I don't think that's acceptable in any public document. And I think we need to make clear as well when we're doing consultations that if there is any foul language, we won't be publishing their response as well, because I don't think that's acceptable either. And I was really interested to note that it is very much, there is some good things in here and there's some bad things. I was really interested to note that we've got a poor option presented. This is one of the comments. The council should look at charging fees, make people book in advance and get better systems in place so people can empty their cars quicker. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that they should, but I am aware that other councils, you do have to book in. And I am pleased to see that most of the questions that are in here by our residents are asked and answered in relation to days and times and things. And there will be no impact on the staff. I think that's another point to note here. Thanks very much, Leader.
Thank you for that, Deputy Leader. Janine, did you want to respond to this?
Yes, points, of course. Yeah, thank you, Deputy Leader. Yes, the Pyle CRC, Kia have refreshed and submitted a new application for that licence. You are right. We've been waiting over 2 years for Natural Resources Wales to grant us a licence. But we are in now very positive dialogue with them. The application's been duly made, and we are hoping at this stage we're meeting ourselves and the Leader, we are officers and the Leader, and meeting with the Director at Natural Resources Wales monthly to monitor this application. Bearing in mind now this is Kia's application, not BCBC's, because it's a waste operator's licence. And we are hopeful that we should have that in the spring. Now that facility will make an enormous difference to the CRC provision in Bridgend, not just because of the size of the facility, but we can extend the amount of things, recyclates, and it should be faster. There's an area where people can park. It should reduce wait times. So absolutely, that is something that we wanted to get it open for the last 2 years. That's something we think we are nearly there with. I won't believe it till I see that licence, but we're hoping by the spring we'll have that facility open. And I absolutely agree. Having gone through that consultation report, I think in the future we need to do an abridged version of it, albeit it is quite good to see the comments. And you are right, they're a mixed bag. There's some very good suggestions in there. In particular, some of the comments about recycling more, and when people leave things at CRCs that have an active life in them, that we look to put them into our reuse shop, because that's an important part of the circular economy. So there are some things that we will definitely take away with us for the future. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Janine. And then Councillor Williams, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Well, I think first thing we need to say is, we don't get elected to cut services. We get elected to improve services. But the realisation is we've got to live within our means. And sadly, I think this is a bit of a taste of what's to come, given our current financial position. So I'm just looking at 3.6 of the report, and you said that you've used number plate recognition data to inform the days. So I suppose that I don't know if it's, well, there's no such thing as a silly question, but are we saying that the days there now, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, are the ones with least demand on the tips, and therefore that's why those days have been proposed as reductions?
Yes, absolutely spot on, Councillor Williams. These are the days where these facilities are used less. So these are the days that we're proposing to close those facilities. I mean, to be fair, the busiest time is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in all of the three sites. But it is, these are the ones where we know that a month upon month the vehicular traffic is lowest, to have least impact.
Thank you for that, Janine. Mark, please, Chief Executive.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I just wanted to build on something that Kelly, as Monitoring Officer, has said. I mean, one of the things we intend doing this year, recognising we've got a particularly challenging budget, is we're going to do the budget consultation later on in the piece. It'll be after Christmas, and the intention would be, hopefully, that we can be more specific within the budget consultation about our proposals. We still need Monitoring Officer advice, because as Kelly has said, there are still some things that will require a longer period of specific consultation, but we would hope that we'd be able to use the budget consultation as a means for some proposed savings. Otherwise, we immediately run into the risk, don't we, of not having a full year savings for a number of things we're going to propose. So I think that's a change that we've considered this year, and we would hope that we can implement in the new year, so that the budget consultations are a more specific piece of work.
Okay. Thank you for that. Sorry, we just had some tactical issues at the screen that we can see from dais, and the screen has now reappeared. So hopefully those technical problems are not lasting problems. Thank you for that, Chief Executive. So the recommendation's been moved and seconded, and certainly note in the comments that Councillor Williams has made around our financial position and the fact that there will be at least 2 community recycling centres open every day of the week across the county borough. I support the recommendations. Is everyone in agreement, please? Aye. Thank you, colleagues. And I will now call a short comfort break because we are an hour and 50 minutes nearly into the meeting. So we will return at 4:22, please. Oh, room 45. Fine. Yeah. Wishing the time out.